We've looked at the Jackie Chan game already and it was pretty solid, but now it's time to look at Jet Li's Rise to Honor. According to Sony, Jet Li himself called them up and asked to be in a video game.
Jet Li calls up Sony and says, "Hey, I'd like to be in a video game."
But beyond Jet Li himself, this game also is the first game with Jim Wallace producing it. His talents would be used a ton later in Sony, including games like Heavenly Sword, Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction, Resistance 2, Mag, Motorstorm, Infamous, Warhawk and Starhawk, as well as a bunch of Sony spin-off games like Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier, the PSP God of War games, Secret Agent Clank, and, Detuned. Another major talent on the game was Corey Yuen, director of Jet Li's very own Hero, who directed all the motion capture work here, and it was the first game shown off at Sony's E3 2003. It's one of those games people remember fondly, spamming forums with how underrated the game is and praising it for how good it was. Let's get into it then. This is Rise to Honor. Rise to Honor opens up with a basic character introduction. Jet Li is Kit Yuen, and he's the bodyguard for a man named Mr. Chang. Chang has an important letter, which is quickly ripped out of his hand, but we'll talk about later. The first mission is a chase sequence that introduces you to the game's QuickTime events. They're extremely easy. If you hear the ding and see the prompt at the top of the screen, you just push R1 and Jet Li does a mo-capped stunt. You fight off enemies by flicking the right stick in their direction, allowing for 360 degrees of combat, with timing playing a role in how much force goes into your punches. Jet Li's motion capture work for the general combat speaks volumes about just how much love and care went into this game. Sure, enemies naturally run up to position themselves in ways that allow the 360-degree combat to work as intended, but all animations flow into one another smoothly no matter where the enemy you're trying to hit is located in position to Jet Li. The hand-to-hand combat feels really good already, but it's also coupled with mixes of grabs, counters, dodges, environmental attacks, and weapons. Landing hits fills the rage meter, which is used to put Jet Li into rage mode when you hold the L1 button. In the early game, using rage mode is pretty much an instant win for Jet Li. You can mostly just match the right stick in the direction of enemies and watch them go down. Fighting with rage mode doesn't knock enemies to the ground as quickly as hitting them without rage mode, allowing you to get more hits in a row on them. That's because there's no way to hit enemies when they're down on the ground. You need to wait for them to get back up. Counters are also tied to the rage meter. If you hold R1, which is the dodge button, and L1, the rage button, at the same time, you can time your analog push to hit at the same time as an enemy attacks to perform a counter. The counters feel a bit clunky, since you can easily just hold L1 and R1 and mash the stick towards the closest enemy until he attacks you for what's essentially an auto counter. It doesn't have a failsafe for spamming like the Arkham games. The holding R1 to dodge is equally as simplistic, but looks just as cool as the rest of the combat. You just hold R1, and Jet Li will automatically dodge any attacks that come his way. The R1 button is also used as the interact button throughout the game. If you see a wall, you can push R1 to kick off of it, or throw a barrel, or pick up a weapon. And yes, sometimes it's unbelievably annoying trying to pick up a weapon in combat when it's close to a wall. The weapons work similar to the Jackie Chan PS1 game, with the first one you get being a chicken in this restaurant with a chef attacking you. This just simply has to be a reference to the Jackie Chan game. When Jet has a weapon, it plays just like the hand-to-hand combat, but there's different animations and higher damage. The weapons are fun to use because they're so visually impressive, but as a gameplay mechanic, they add really little to the game and feel kinda half-baked. There's just so many weird, hard-to-explain issues with them. Let me try though. You can't hit with a weapon while running if you're close to an enemy. You can hit while running, but you need to be a couple feet back from the enemy or else the stick just doesn't register your pushes. The dodging is extremely important later on in the game when it gets hard as hell, and the dodging here is a bit off as well when you have a weapon. In normal hand-to-hand, Jet will start dodging the moment your finger hits the R1 button. Even while being comboed, it usually just starts dodging. In the late game, you're snapping in and out of dodge mode to time attacks, and this just doesn't work with weapons. You need to wait for the block animation to play before you can dodge. I'm talking milliseconds here, but it's enough that it feels heavier and makes some fights extremely frustrating if you have a weapon on you. There aren't any unlockable combos or upgrades in the game either, so this truly is it. Since the right stick is used for combat, there's no camera control, but surprisingly that's literally never an issue. It's immediately clear that the developers wanted this to play like an action movie from start to finish. This game could easily be a fun little movie game that you watch, but no, this game gets hard. The later stages get absolutely insane. People swarm you from all directions through the entire last half of the game. It takes a mix of skill and luck to finish some of these battles. You will die a lot. and I mean a lot. The way the game plays during the late stages is basically twitching your index fingers back and forth between the R1 and L1 buttons and quickly lifting up to hit them with an analog stick swipe. You counter every attack and mostly try to land blows when enemies are staggered. You're timing hits between extremely short windows of time to hit enemies when you can. You need to be strategic with your rage meter too, because if it's too low, you can't counter. The rage meter also lets you do that 360-degree attack by holding L1 and R1 and spinning the analog stick in a circle. The hand-to-hand combat is overall fast, twitchy, fun, and a bit repetitive, but anyway, why is Jet Li fighting all these guys in the first place? So, Kit is an undercover cop assigned as a bodyguard to his gangster boss Chang, who's a friend of Kit's father. Chang has decided to lead the life of organized crime, but this enrages one of the gang members named Quan, the final boss of the game. After you chase that guy Hung from the start of the game, Kit gets a call from Chang's phone where it turns out Chang's been kidnapped and he's down by the docks. So Kit heads down to save Chang, but Chang ends up getting assassinated by a sniper. In his final moments, Chang gives Kit an envelope which contains valuable information about the crime syndicate. He wants Kit to head to San Francisco to bring the letter to his daughter Michelle, who's also a childhood friend of Kit. That's the mission then. Get the letter to Michelle while the gang tries everything in their power to stop him from doing so. But wait, let's rewind a bit back to Kit trying to rescue Chang. This is the first shooting mission. Kit can take cover behind waist-high objects by holding R1. Hold the right stick in the direction you want to shoot, and he'll aim his pistols. It's auto-targeting based off the stick direction. The pistols never need to reload, and they've got unlimited ammo, so you can just hold R2 the whole time if you want. There are interactive objects like explosive barrels that you can shoot, and this too is done with auto-targeting. You just hold L2 to auto-aim at the target and then push R2 to shoot it. The destructible environments and explosions happening everywhere remind me of John Woo's Stranglehold. There's this section where you shoot signs onto people's heads, or here, where you can jump on a hospital cart and roll down the hall. The Max Payne slow-mo dive is something that never gets old too. The shooting parts of this game are really fun, well, except for one of them, the final shooting section. This level is absolute garbage. It feels like pure luck whether you make it or not. The cover is set up to the right, and you can't look to the right because the camera's locked. There's endlessly respawning enemies just shredding everything with bullets that kill you way too quickly, and you need to move from cover to cover. If by some miracle you make it to the other side, you go up to a second floor where you do it all again, but way harder. This was truly one of the worst missions I've ever played in any game. It's somehow not as bad as the final stealth mission, but first let's check out the first stealth missions. The stealth in this game is cheesy and simple. Guards have flashlights that are complete vision cones and walk looping paths. If their flashlight goes out, they're completely blind. They're forced stealth sections where if you get caught, you have to retry. There is absolutely no margin for error, and you need to play the exact way the developers want you to play here. You'll often have to watch an entire animation loop to figure out where enemies are going to go before making your move. Even if you want to risk it, there's a chance the enemy will have a preset, "what's that behind me" move. Checkpoints in these stealth missions are really unforgiving too, and sometimes it makes you rewatch an intro cutscene every single time you get caught, and you're going to get caught a lot. The dialogue between the guards is fun to listen to the first time though.
It's Frankie's birthday next week. He wants that Rise to Honor game.
Oh yeah, I saw the commercial for that one. It looks really good. Hey!
The final stealth mission is sneaking into Quan's lair, and it's basically a sewer level. This mission is an abomination. You just have to avoid these guys with flashlights while you walk down a long tunnel, but it goes on forever. And if you get caught, it sends you back multiple minutes. And it's still really easy to get caught. This is truly the worst part of the whole game, this level. Some people like these things, and if that's you, then hey, have at it, but that ain't me. But yes, sneaking through the sewer level to get to the final boss battle. This game has boss battles. You'll often need to learn boss battles combos to get the one spot where you can get a hit in, and there's a very good chance you'll end up dying over and over and over again while you learn where exactly you can get that hit in. The first boss battle between Faye and Hung is pretty easy and can be beaten by just countering lots and hitting them when stunned, but the rest of them are absolute nightmares. The fight with Chung Mao Pao is extremely unfair. It starts easy enough as you just counter and punch your way to damage him, but eventually he starts grabbing you, and there's no way to avoid being grabbed other than just running away. When he grabs you, it takes off an actually just flat out stupid amount of health. You really have to keep retrying this mission and hope that you can beat him fast enough so that he can't get 3 grabs on you. This is quite early on in the game too, and I can see this turning people off. The fight with Sung Lung is kinda cool, and it really just forces you to charge up your rage meter enough that you can spam him with duo attacks with Michelle. This whole level has her by your side, and you just grapple her to enter into this mode. She's little more than a weapon though, but it takes the boss out really easily. Billy Soon, he's probably the worst of the boss puzzles. He blocks, dodges, and counters every single attack you throw his way. There's no way to stun him, that is until you realize that you can break these boxes to get a weapon. Once you get one, you still can't hit him with it, but if you throw the weapon at him, it leaves a brief window open where you can get a combo in. You've got to just keep throwing the weapon at him over and over and over again, and punching him over and over and over again. I spent forever on this fight, and I really don't think there's any other way to beat him. Wang Jiang is a gun-based boss battle in 3 waves, taking place on 3 separate ships. He does an enormous amount of damage if he hits you, and the cover is all breakable, so you've got to abuse what you can to beat this guy. Shooting interactive objects is the best move, but honestly, this too just comes down to retrying over and over and over again until you luck out and beat the guy. Dying in wave 3 also sends you back to wave 1 as well. It's totally brutal. The worst one though is the final boss against Quan. I spent over an hour on this. He dodges every single attack, and you've got a time limit because if you wait too long, Michelle falls to her death. The game doesn't tell you this, but if you run over to Michelle and grab her, you'll lift some of the weight off her arms and raise her meter up a bit, but this opens you up to an unavoidable kick from Quan. Think of it like trading your own health for her health. And again, you can't hit the guy. After spending way too long, and I mean way too long, I finally figured out that you need to counter his attack by pushing the analog stick backwards instead of forwards like I've been doing the whole game, which can allow you to get a couple hits in. It's best to use your rage attacks here to really knock his health down. There's more little mini boss battles, but I think you kind of get the idea. They're trial and error mixed with a dab of luck. If you're emulating this with quick saves and a walkthrough, you'll be alright, but I never used a walkthrough and I opted to play this on a real PS2. It was frustrating. The real PS2 performance is fantastic, by the way. I'm really sensitive to being annoyed at frame rate drops, but this whole game from start to finish ran at a rock solid 60 FPS. Rise to Honor is a game where, if anything ever stops feeling exciting, the game hits you with an exciting new story beat or gameplay change. It's simple but paced extremely well. Cutscenes transition between gameplay mechanics and tell a story. They're all fully voice acted and are full of action. Most of all, they provide an illusion of uninterrupted gameplay by seamlessly transitioning between cutscene and gameplay with no loading screens, like Uncharted. You're never annoyed when a cutscene pops up either, since they're always fun to watch and progress the story along in an exciting way. Rise to Honor was frustrating, but ahead of its time. Check this out, I have a puppy now. Her name's Trip. I named her after Trip from Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. Just wanted to show you guys my dog. And hey, if you can do me a kindness and help spread the video a bit with the like button, I'm sure Trip would love that too. But yeah, thanks. You're the best.